Okay, so we have some very basic importing and exporting going on. We've got 2 files so far, and that's fine. We have our 2 functions that we are exporting by name, add and sample, and then we import them over here in our index.ts. And right now I'm executing this using Node, which is fine. But let's say that I actually am trying to run this in the browser, and there's a lot more stuff going on, right? Maybe we're manipulating the DOM, doing some browser-specific stuff. So I'll make my index.html, and I'm going to just add some basic boilerplate in there. Let's shrink some of this down. We'll go with modules as our title, script with a source of dist/index.js, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and run tsc one more time, and then open this file in the browser. And what do we see? Oh, a lovely error. Exports is not defined. So what's going on here? Well, the JavaScript in the browser doesn't know about common JS modules. It doesn't know about the exports keyword. It doesn't know about module. It doesn't know about require. It just does not play with this common JS syntax that worked great in the Node world, which is just one of those things that sucks about JavaScript, but it is what it is. We've got these different ecosystems, the browser JavaScript versus Node JavaScript, and we try and reconcile them. So essentially, the output right now that we're getting is just not browser friendly. Now you can use tools like you could use Webpack, you could use Require.js. There's different tools you could use to make this work, but it is not going to work as is. So we have another thing we could do, which is to tell TypeScript we could just not use modules, I guess, like we did in the first video or second video in this section, and not have import and export, and then just add each script in the correct order, right? So after that, I would have to do utils, and then I would make sure I don't import and export anything there, and then in my utils.ts, I don't export anything, but this defeats the whole point of this section. I want to talk about organizing our code, but if I do it this way, now our index.js and our utils.js are just regular, plain, boring JavaScript. If I run it in the browser, I have to make sure to include them in the right order. And you can see I just messed that up, even though I was not trying to. I did mess it up. We have to have the utils in first. So that's not great either. But it does technically work fine in the browser. But imagine I have hundreds of files, lots of complicated logic and dependencies. I don't want to do that. I want to use imports and exports, so I'm going to go back to doing that and make sure I export each of these functions. But what I want to tell TypeScript is, please preserve the import and exports. I want to use this ES6 module syntax, which is what imports and exports are, also known as ES module syntax. I want to use that in my JavaScript code that you compile. So we can do that by going down into the tsconfig file and looking for the module setting. So this option right now is set to common JS, which is why we're getting the require module export stuff that doesn't work in the browser. But I can change this to something else. And we do get autocomplete in here, I think. We should. Hello. There we go. And I will go with ES6, or really any of these ES ones will work, but we can do ES6 or ES 2015. And then if I recompile my code, I lost my terminal. There it is. I run TSC again. Now our output is going to look different. Here we are. It still has our import in there. We look at this output. It still has the export in there. So, are we all good now? Can we run this in the browser? Does our browser know about import and export? No, it does not. Cannot use import statement outside a module. We've got another twist here. This is just part of dealing with modules in the browser. Modern browsers do support module syntax, ES modules, import, export, blah, blah, blah. But only modern browsers. So first of all, you might get a different error if you're trying this in not Chrome or Firefox. But secondly, we have to specify type of module when we have this script. When we write this script, right there is an attribute, type equals module. Rerun this. And we are almost there, but now we get a different error. And this error has to do with the fact that I'm not serving anything, and I'm trying to use the file protocol, which it's just not allowed when you're doing a module like this. So I have to get a server going. Let's just do npm init-y, and then let's do our light server. And then I'll go to my package.json, and this is the same setup we've done earlier. I'll add in a start script that simply runs light server. So that finished up. Now I can run npm start, and now we open up our console. Okay, we can ignore this error about the favicon. It is indeed working. So kind of a lot of hurdles to jump through if we want to use really any of the module syntax in the browser, but it's at least an option to change that output. If we go down here and close that, we specify in our tsconfig.json, instead of using common.js, which is what was there before, I want to use ES module syntax. Then it preserves the import and export syntax from our TypeScript. As you can see, right, in our index.js, we've just got import. Utils.js, we've got export. It preserves that, and then it's up to us to make sure wherever we're running this code understands ES module syntax. And the easiest way to do that is to say type is module, make sure you have a server, and it works. Okay, so we can control that output, but either way, what you'll use most of the time in TypeScript is this ES module syntax. This is what we actually write, and then we can control what TypeScript compiles on the other side of things. Next, we're going to dive more into this syntax. If you need a recap or refresher, or you just don't know ES module syntax, we'll talk more about default and named exports and different ways of importing things.